Hi everybody, I'm Alex. So, as Carolina said, I'm working at Kleros. Kleros, it's a decentralized dispute resolution protocol. So we are live since 2017, and we're live on Ethereum mainnet and on Gnosis chain. And yes, today I'm going to talk a bit more about governance and the journey from the multisig level to more constitutional DAOs, and we are going to see what does that mean. Let's talk about issues with DAO. And Diogo mentioned it at the first talk, basically. We have an issue with gas price in the industry, and that could definitely be a big issue for DAO. When you need to vote, basically, and you are a small token holder, you need to vote, and it costs you $20 because the gas stays very high. It's definitely a big issue. It can create voter apathy, and that's harming your governance, definitely. Another issue with having your DAO fully on-chain is the fact that it can be expensive to deploy and to set up all the smart contracts. So basically, what are most of the young DAOs using setup? It's the following one. It's you have your governance off-chain on snapshot, and you have a multisig, basically, usually a Gnosis safe, that's allowing to replicate basically the decision taken by your snapshot space. However, it could be an issue. Why? Because multisigs are a single point of failure. And basically, these three kind of problems can happen. You can have signers' keys that can be hacked, and that happened basically for big bridges. We saw like a lot of value was lost in this way. The governance can be bypassed, and that happens also if you know where to look in the ecosystem. So sometimes the multisig is executing things that are not voted by the snapshot space. So that's one thing that happened. And as well, there could be issue with human errors. And we have seen that some DAOs sometimes made the mistake and send the value to the contract address and not the right address. Then funds were lost because it was a human error. So one idea, let's think about how to solve this. The idea would be to take the best of both worlds. So what you want is, from the off-chain world, you want to have no gas fees for your community to vote easily. And from the on-chain world, what you want is trustless execution on-chain. So I'm going to talk about one of the products that is developed by Kleros. It's the Kleros Snapshot module, and it's allowing you to do that. So let's deep dive. So the idea is not to reinvent the wheel. It's to take the existing setup, so a snapshot plus a Gnosis safe, and then to add a plugin that will allow you to have a link between your safe and your snapshot. So let's see this process step by step. First, you go in your safe app, basically. You select Zodiac. And with Zodiac is developed by Gnosis Guild. Gnosis Guild is a team that was incubated by Gnosis DAO. And they are developing this app called Zodiac that is basically a suite of different plugins that allows to have extra feature for your safe. So you can see there is the exit module, the roles modifier module, and I'm going to deep dive a bit more into the Kleros snapshot module. So the first things to note is at the beginning, they ask you to put the snapshot name. And the snapshot name is created with an ENS. So in this case, I'm going to take 1inch as an example because 1inch DAO is using this module. And it's allowing you to make a link between your safe and your snapshot space. Then there are some more technical parameters that are linked to the oracle, that is reality, that is here to secure basically the transaction and make sure everything is all right. So let's take a concrete example. This is a real proposal from 1inch DAO. Basically, they wanted to stake 1 million DAI in Maker in order to earn some yield in October 2023. As you can see, this proposal was passed successfully, as we have 97% of approval. But one thing that differed with most snapshots you would find, it's at the bottom, basically, you can see there is the mainnet safe. This is the safe, basically, that is linked with the snapshot space. and this is the safe that holds basically the treasury of the 1-inch DAO. And what you can see there is a transaction batch, and basically this transaction was prepared by the person that prepared the proposal, and it should reflect exactly what is going to be done by this safe. So the next step is to execute this transaction in a trustless way, and anybody can execute it. And the idea is basically to take somebody like, for instance, Carlos. Carlos is part of 1-inch team. He's technically minded, so he knows that the transaction is the right one, it's correct. So basically, he's going to go to reality, this oracle, and to answer by the affirmative to these two questions. What are those two questions? The first part of the question is, does the transaction implement what has been voted? So we don't want basically the DAO treasury to send the funds to Aave or like to the wrong address. So it needs to be sent to Maker. The second part of the question is, does the proposal pass the DAO requirements? What are the DAO requirements? It's basically a set of rules that are here to structure the governance. And I will go a bit more in details about that. So in order to do that, he put a deposit, so if amount on this yes answering question in the oracle. There is a challenge period. In this case of 1-inch is 3 days. After those 3 days, the transaction can be executed in a fully trustless way, basically. And here you can see after the snapshot that the 1 million was taken in Maker protocol. So what I want to highlight is the fact that it is an optimistic governance process. So some of you might know about optimistic rollup. The idea is the same. It's basically that, like I described previously, most of the time there is no challenge, basically, and the proposal is enforced. However, what can happen is there is a challenge period of 3 days, as I said, and a challenge can happen there. So, and that's where basically Kleros, as a dispute resolution protocol, intervene basically in order to solve that. So let's take another example. So this time we have Alice, and Alice, she's not technically minded, for instance. So yeah, she put basically a deposit on yes, but she didn't check the transaction. On the other side, we have Bob. Bob is technically minded. He knows that Alice made a mistake. So basically, we have a batch of transactions. We have a proposal that was voted by a DAO, and we have two different viewpoints that are opposing each other. This is very similar to, this is a dispute, basically. So this is a case. And at any time, anybody during the challenge period can call for Kleros, that is the final arbitrator. So I'm not going to go deep in all the details about how Kleros work, but the idea is basically you have jurors that are financially incentivized in order to do the work, look at the case, and give the more coherent answer. In this case, the jurors enforce the no. This way, basically, the transaction cannot be executed at all, and basically, the 1-inch DAO is saving 1 million from a costly mistake. So, yeah, that's the second part of the diagram. Basically, in this case, the proposal was rejected. Of course, after a challenge period with an arbitrator like Kleros, the proposal can be also enforced, and here you can see the full diagram. So let's go back to our 3 pain points. Basically, you can see that if you go for the full decentralization path, that means that you delete all the signers of your multisig, and the only way to pass a proposal and to execute a transaction is by the way I have described with an oracle. This is a way to solve these 3 issues. So you don't have any signer's keys anymore, so the signer key cannot be compromised. In terms of governance, it cannot be bypassed as well, because the only way to execute any transaction is to basically go through the snapshot proposal process. And in terms of human errors, as I've explained, basically the community is financially incentivized to have a look, check the transaction, and avoid mistakes. The interesting part is with this setup, as I've mentioned, decentralizing multisig is just like the first step or one use case possible. We can think about deeper use cases. And where does that fit? It's when we look at what is this DAO requirements I've mentioned. So in the case of 1inch, it's a document, basically, that is stored on IPFS, and it's a set of rules that the proposal needs to comply by those rules. And in this document, you find words like quorum, for instance, majority voting, the fact that the proposal needs to be accurate and complete, and also details about, like, for instance, the voting period. It should be at least 5 days. You understand that if your voting period, for instance, for your proposal, it's only 1 hour, it can be an attack or something like that. And it will be immediately challenged by the jurors at Kleros. And you will lose your deposit, basically. So why do you, and this looks a lot like a proto-constitution. Like all these things around, like set of rules about governance, it's something that you will find a lot in DAO constitution. And that's my first point here. If you look at Arbitrum constitution, you will see a lot of things about supermajorities, about approval requirements, for instance. Another important aspect of a constitution is to have basically key inalienable principle. In the case of, for instance, ENS, their inalienable principle is the fact that the first one is the DAO should not vote any proposal that would mess up, basically, with the ownership right to own a domain name, basically. So that's one key point that is part to the ENS DAO vision value, as you can say. The interesting part is with most of these DAO constitutions, when you think about it, it's a piece of paper, it's some rules, it's enforced by the token holder, by the core dev as well, but at the end of the day, the only security you have that the rules are going to be met is the fact that it's written somewhere and it's basically a piece of say. And in this setup, you can see that you have few people or people that have the same interest that have all the power. The interesting part is with what I have described, if you understand it, you can replace the DAO requirements by a real constitution. And in that sense, it would be a way to have within your DAO a split of power. You would have your legislative power that will rely with your snapshot space. You will have your executive power that will be your multisig, or your safe contract, basically, holding your treasury. And then you will have a neutral third party, basically, that will look at the proposal and check if the proposal are constitutional or not. And that's with Kleros, basically. And this interesting part is the fact that you are putting extra constraint on top of your DAO, basically. But by doing that, you are also guaranteeing your future trade partner to apply the rules that you are committed to. So during this talk, I talk about the multisig stage, then decentralizing the multisig, and then at the end, more constitutional DAO. It's a journey, I think, and it's a journey very similar to the journey of decentralization. And I think with DAO maturing, it will be more and more important to have these check and balances in terms of governance. Thank you for your time. If you have any question, I'm here, and you can also contact me on Telegram. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We still have a little time for a few questions, if someone wants to jump.
Okay, so the first question, can this model be applied on sequencers? Like, because if you said that it doesn't really have to apply on just on the specific purpose of a multisig. Like it can be extrapolated to other use cases. So that's the first question. And then the second question, the financial incentive part. If you apply this for the sequencers, would you Would Arbitrum, for instance, if they implement this model, would they be able to use their own token as the financial incentive to keep everyone in check? Because I'm just thinking that this could be a way to make Orb, like the token, more useful, since it's just a shitty governance token.
Thank you for your question. Here I'm really focusing more on DAOs with this module, and it's, as you can understand, really designed for DAOs because it's like within the safe app and basically the snapshot space as well. So it's really designed for this use case. To be honest, I'm not technically deep enough into a sequencer to understand if it can be done that way. But I think the interesting part to get is the fact that Kleros is doing dispute resolution in a decentralized way, but it can also be seen as a subjective oracle. So basically you have something like Chainlink that is an objective oracle. You want to get the price of like oil, for instance, on chain. That's what objective oracle do. They deal with objective data. With Kleros, you can do the same, but with subjective data. You can bring subjective data on chain thanks to the setup of Kleros. So I think that's what is interesting. So I guess for sequencer, need to do a bit more research. I cannot say for sure that it will fit or not, but interesting question. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you explain what you mean by subjective data first? And second, can you remind us what is preventing some people to join jurors, like to become jurors and orient the outcome of the judgment towards their own preference and not the better, like what the group would have preferred? But I think, like, first I would like to understand what you mean by subjective oracle, because like precisely what is the right outcome of a judgment if it's subjective?
So yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I guess at some point it can even become a philosophical question. But yeah, I guess the idea of what is subjective, it's like everything that is not objective. So things where basically you can have a debate on it. And that happens a lot in our economy when you think about it. A lot of contracts, a contract, for instance, for a building, you have some set of rules, and some rules are not like everything is not objectively measurable. There is a part of appreciation. If I want to give a more concrete example that will fit, if you have a contract between one freelancer and somebody that is building a website for somebody, this person have like some specific thing he wants for his website. The freelancer can say, okay, but I have met these, and the guy that needs the website would say, no, but I wasn't needing this, and it's not complying, so I'm not going to pay you. And this is what I mean by subjective things, basically. And I think it's everywhere, basically. When you think about it, like all of the most of the big contracts have some subjective aspect. And the interesting point you are mentioning is, you say, why Kleros will deliver the right answer. So in the case of the website, for instance, does the guy meet the guidelines or not? You know, it's like the question there, why the Kleros juror will do that. The idea is not to, it's to get the interesting point, sorry, it's the fact that, sorry, I'm getting the idea in my head. Yes, it's the fact that it's about not being right, it's about being coherent. So it's the idea of shelling point, basically, and it's the fact that if you take a group of humans, you put some incentives for them in order to vote coherently. And what does it mean, voting coherently? It means voting with the majority. So that's basically what Kleros is made for. There is no objective truth. There is just a coherent truth, basically, where everybody agrees on something. So that's for your first questions. And then your second question is about like what prevents somebody to apply as a juror and to try to trick the system, basically. So at Clearos, we have a system of different courts and different level. And in this case, for instance, at the beginning, there will be only 5 jurors that will be drawn, basically. So if the 5 jurors are basically all coherent and they all vote for the person, it's okay. But as you say, somebody can try to attack the system. So in this case, the person will have to buy the token, so the PNK token, to stake the token to the court, basically, in order to be drawn as a juror. And the risk and the fact is that it costs money to do that, basically. And the strength of Clearos is the fact that you can appeal. So if the first judgment, you believe that those 5 guys, they bought their place there, you can appeal, and then you will have more jurors. And with more jurors, basically, it's going to be even more expensive to bribe. And you can do that several times. And this creates a very, very strong cost to attack and to break the system. And basically, at the end, if you manage to break the system, you will have break Clearos. So it's a grieving attack. So it's the same principle than blockchain. So you're going to spend a lot of money just at the end to break the project. So right now, with the current TVL, it will cost more than $70 million to attack the system that way.
Thank you.
Right. Somewhat similar question coming to these incentives of the Clearos jurors. So like, who's paying them? But then just because we already were on this topic, like $70 million is less than what's in treasuries, no? Like if I make some proposal to empty the treasury and I can get the liquidity to buy out Clearos, do I not have like is there some other fallback?
So yeah, basically that's why at Clearos we are working on increasing the staking rate, basically to make this cost even more expensive, basically. But yeah, the game theory behind it is that. And what was your first question? Sorry.
Like who's paying you? So
who's paying the juror? So the jurors are paid by the person that paid the arbitration fee. So there is 2 mechanisms. First, there is the person that pays the arbitration fees. So it's an arbitration fees paid in ETH first. And then the jurors, they are staking PNK. So it's our own token. And if they vote coherently, basically, they will get the PNK token from the person that votes not coherently. So those person will be slash. The person that votes currently will get more token. And it's also interesting because it's incentivizing on the long term the jurors to really do the work and look at the case in order to vote coherently. If they don't do the work and they vote randomly, they will lose money on the long time. They can be lucky the first time, but on the long term, they will lose money, basically. So that's how the incentive system is designed.
Just to go back to this other point, because like to some extent, so say that you have some, I actually don't super know how this works, but presumably there's someone in charge of governing the DAO and executing these transactions if you don't have the Clearos mechanism, but then you know who that person is. So either they make a human mistake or they make sort of a deliberate stealing the treasury transaction. Then you have a fallback to the real court systems and prisons and police forces. Whereas if this is fully anonymized, like, do you not lose that very important part? And so is there some KYC, some like physical, like maybe within the Clearos system, you know a whole bunch of people who hold the token, and so that's in some sense a backstop to this, or how do you think about this?
I think it's a very interesting question. I understand what you mean, and I guess it's true in a lot of like DAOs that we know the founders, and like most of the time everything went well. But we are in crypto, we know that things are changing sometimes, guys are disappearing, guys are changing names and everything. So, and also when you think about it, when you are saying you are a DAO, a decentralized organization, but at the end it's just 3 friends that owns all the money in a multisig, you are not really a DAO. You are mostly like branding yourself as a DAO. And yeah, I guess you know the guy, you can go to court system or things like that. At Kleros, we have the choice is really to have a pure decentralized dispute resolution protocol. So it's important for the juror as well, for their safety, for everything, that they are anonymous. So anybody can be a juror from anywhere in the world. So we are really deep into this ethos about like openness and decentralization and anonymity. So it's really, the trust rely on the protocol, really.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Amazing speakers, amazing presentation, amazing audience.